This is Thursday, June the 25th, 2015. The Board of Health meeting is now in order. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item is a public hearing with respect to consideration of amending our current tobacco regulations to raise the minimum sales age to buy tobacco and electronic cigarettes from the age of 18 to 21. This has been properly advertised and noticed to license holders in North Andover that there'll be a public hearing at 7 o'clock tonight. So I'd like to entertain a motion to open that public hearing, please.
Move to open the meeting, the public hearing.
Second.
All right, so that public hearing is now open. Do we need to vote? I mean, we're just open, so.
Yeah, so we open the meeting. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to it?
Is there anyone here to speak about the sales age tonight?
I'd just like to introduce some testimony.
Okay.
All right. The reason that we're doing this is that we're moving to raise the age to 21. Several surrounding towns, including Methuen, Lawrence, Andover, Middleton now. Basically, we're becoming an island of 18. I think that we've reached the tipping point. The state of Hawaii has just gone to 21 statewide. I think it's a matter of time before Massachusetts does, but in the interim, I don't think that North Andover should be a place where people under the age of 21 come to because it's legal for them. So I am going to move that we amend our town regulation, and I'd like these amendments to be handled as one matter. The first amendment would be remove the definition of the word minor in section 2.16. Next, in section 2.2, remove the number 18 and replace it with 21. Next, delete the title in section 3 and insert the following, quote, tobacco and nicotine delivery product sales to persons under the age of 21 prohibited, end quote. Next, in section 3.1, remove the word minor and substitute it with the words, quote, to a person under the age of 21, end quote. Next, in the last section of section 3.2, remove number 18 and insert number 21. Next, in the first sentence of section 3.3, remove number 18 and insert 21. Next, in section 10.1A, remove 18 and insert 21. Next, in section 11.1, remove 18 and insert 21. That's the text of the amendment. We'll provide a copy to our transcriptionist.
Second the motion to amend.
We'll take the motion outside the public hearing, but we've entered the context of what we're planning to do, which again, this is in all parts of our regulation. It raises the age from 18 to 21 of all tobacco products. So,
All right, so this is just discussion now.
yes.
Okay, fine.
So if you want to discuss, feel free.
You know, the one thing came to mind, and I even read this in the newspaper too, where people are worried that the people in the armed services can't buy a pack of cigarettes. And I was thinking about that. And my answer to that is, if you took 10 servicemen or servicewomen who are 19 years of age or 18 years of age, and we said to them, what we want to do in North Andover is raise the age to 21 to help reduce the risk of children and teenagers getting their hands on the purchasing of illegal cigarettes. If you were to ask these servicemen and servicewomen, I would venture to say that most would say, we don't want to keep it at 18. We agree that you would raise it to the age of 21. I can't see that happening. So I just wanted to say, because that's come up a couple different times, but I just can't see.
The last Board of Health meeting, I reviewed a number of the stats regarding smoking, and that certainly was one. People that smoke,
Right.
I'm in favor of increase in the age. And the information that just passed to us right now, some of this I had not seen in the past, but nearly 1,000 non-smoking adults and children in Massachusetts die from diseases related to exposure to secondhand smoke every year. Among the smoking population, tobacco use causes more than 8,000 deaths per year in Massachusetts and costs the states $5.5 billion. This change in the regulation will help to limit the high school and middle school youth's access to tobacco. And I'm surprised, as I said a number of times in the past, that the state hasn't done it yet. I think the state will, as the cities and towns continue to increase the age. I think Arlington just increased their age too. I'm not sure on that, but it's something that should be done. I mean, that's, we're all members of the Board of Health, and from a health and safety perspective, it's a wise thing to do.
Anybody over here? No? And again, nobody from the audience? Okay, so.
Move to close the public hearing.
You're all set?
Just a
Ron's
script
raising his
error,
hand.
My error on the second of the amendments, it says section 2.2, and it should be 2.2.
2.22,
Number 2?
Number 2.
the second point.
2.22.
It's the definition of retail tobacco store.
Thank you, Ron.
So move to close the public hearing?
Second.
All right, all's in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing is now closed. We could take before us the motion that's been previously discussed or read into the record by Frank. I think we could take a motion to amend the regulation as presented during the public hearing.
So we'll move to amend the regulation as previously stated into the record with the editorial change that Ron pointed out.
Second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the motion itself? So we have before us a copy of the regulation here, so we can sign this tonight, but as we've done with most regulations, it doesn't go into effect tonight. Generally, it's a good idea because of education to local retailers that generally a 3-month lead time is a good framework. So the regulation that Susan put before us indicates that the regulation is pending for adoption tonight. It would take effect on September 1st, 2015. And generally, that's consistent with our past practices of new regulations, unless there's any further thought on that. That's the only other change to the regulation at the time frame when this would go into effect. All other parts of it remaining intact.
Are we going to, Ron, are we going to get new signage for our permittees?
Yes, it's available to the state.
Oh, okay, fine.
The thing is, you have the combination sign. So
Yes, that's right. You have a specific
Change
combination.
that on, I can change that because it's a homemade. I can change.
Okay.
That's good.
The question I have actually for my Cheryl Savara here from the Mass Association of Health Boards.
He should come
I
up.
don't know whether I'm correct.
Ron?
Yeah, Ron, you should come up here if you're going to talk a little bit more than.
It's just something that came to mind. In this last section on the effective date of September
1st. Of course, everything in these regulations took effect already, is already in effect. I think it was February 1st or February 1st. So it really, this is wrong, I believe. We would want, and I'm trying to think of the wording that would be appropriate, that all of the matters pertaining to the age 21 shall take effect on September 1st, all remain. So that, I just thought of that. It's more form. I mean, it doesn't, I just want to be sure that the old regs.
A change shall take, any changes.
Yeah. How do you
The
hear?
amendments voted this evening
Yes.
should take effect.
Yes.
We need to say this regulation as amended.
So,
Or this regulation as amended is a good.
as amended. As amended.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I wanted to.
Okay, so we'll be
Just a
bringing
matter-
this back for
Yes.
signature on a
Yes.
future date then, if that's the
Right.
case.
I'll get it right back to
Gotta bring,
Okay.
gotta bring a
What are
printer.
we going to do for date?
We're going to keep the date.
We're adopting it tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks.
As amended. Thank you, Ron. And thank you, Cheryl, for coming tonight. We appreciate all your input. You've been here before and have advised the board on matters
Want
relating.
Cheryl to introduce herself? It was nice of her to come down.
Sure. Okay.
Believe me, this is
There
the
you go.
best public hearing I've
Yeah,
been to.
well, come right up and say
Come on
that.
up.
We'd appreciate
Several
that.
months. Thank you very much. My name is Cheryl Sabara. I am the senior staff attorney for the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, and I have been before you frequently, and I helped you draft these changes with your very able tobacco control director, and I think if you just add the amendments effective, it'll be fine. I'm sure Ron will send out notices to the retailers. There'll be a summary in the newspaper. It won't be a confusing thing at all for the public.
Great.
You may or may not know that several of us, certainly myself, are very much against changing the regulations until Ron brought in about 6 months or so ago tobacco products that had flavors,
Yeah.
focused towards the kids. And that was it. That totally changed my mind at that time. Plus, in fact, my maternal grandfather, I mean, he died of emphysema, and an uncle of mine died of emphysema. Horrible ways to
It
die.
is. And 12, of the 12 to 17-year-olds that smoke, 95% of them smoke a flavored product.
Really.
That's new research that just came out last year.
Michelle, where does Massachusetts stand on this? Why are they tailing
Well,
so
we-
far behind? Are they that far behind right now?
Well, we have right now with you folks, we've got 64 or 65 municipalities that have increased the minimum legal sales age to 21. There is a bill that has been filed. This is the second legislative session that it's been filed in. When we did the smoke-free workplace law, we started doing the work locally in 1994, and we got the statewide law in 2004. So it took 10 years or 5 legislative sessions before the legislators felt that they were at a tipping point and could safely pass it. So if that's any indication, hopefully it isn't now that Hawaii has done it, but if it is, then we're looking at a few more years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay, we ready to vote?
And we're voting on the age,
The amendment.
the amendment for September 1st, right?
No,
It's all.
we're
included.
voting
all
on
inclusive.
the amendment that Frank voted in. It's just an editorial change in the regulation itself.
Okay.
It's being adopted tonight. This is the final vote, and would go into effect on September 1st.
Fine.
It's just a detailed change in the wording of how it's shown as what's happening tonight.
Okay. Fine.
Okay? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there are no opposed, so it's unanimous. Thank you. So we won't be signing tonight, but again, this has been adopted tonight because there needs to be a small change in the final page, just that indicates the acceptance of what happened, so. We have, maybe we'll do the minutes at the end. We have no old business at this point, so we have a couple of new business items. So the first one I see is 526 Winter Street, a matter coming before us for Merrimack Engineering. And I will let Merrimack Engineering come forward. If you come to the podium, please.
Use the table too, right?
Or you can sit at the table, whichever you prefer.
No, it's something else. I don't see it.
My name is Vladimir Nemchinov. I am an engineer for Merrimack Engineering Services. And today I would like to present several of our projects, and one of them is located at 526 Winter Street. we request for variance for setback of septic tank from wetlands from 75 feet to 50 feet for this site, because if you see the plan, all northwest side of it, it's buffer zone to the wetland. So we managed to put a new soil absorption system outside of 100-foot buffer zone. Old one was way within buffer zones. And we put pump tank 75 feet off wetland. But septic tank stays within just out of 50 feet buffer zone. It satisfies state requirements, but we ask variance for the town, from the town to change distance from 75 to 50.
So the distances are in reference to this right here, correct?
Yes.
We're just getting oriented, yeah.
We are talking specifically about
When you say septic tank, you're talking about the
This
leach
septic
field?
tank.
Oh,
This septic
this,
tank.
okay,
Okay.
so
Leach
we're looking at the leach field.
This field is out, you can see it's out
That's
of
okay.
100-foot
Okay.
buffer zone.
So the septic tank here, this is what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
That's 50 feet, you can see from wetland. To the-
Oh, it measures at 51 here, you're showing, okay.
Yeah,
And this is the existing one?
no, it's all proposed.
This is all proposed. Where's the existing one?
Existing leach field is right here. It's way close to the wetland than proposed.
So it's already there.
Yes.
So overall, Dan, this is better because we're moving the leach field further away, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
So, and the pipe's going to run all the way around the front,
Yes.
the side of the house and underneath the driveway, so there's
Yes.
going to be a sleeve here?
Yes.
Is that's a pretty long distance, is that okay, the way this is set up to be pumped?
Yes, but we try to keep it outside of buffer zone. As much as possible. And with minimum disturbance to pavement.
So the piping already comes out the front of the house, so it wouldn't make any sense necessarily to put these tanks in the back, is that correct?
But in this case, it will be difficult just to, and more costly for owners to put piping system inside the house and underneath.
All the way underneath
Yeah.
the house and out the back end?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's most economically feasible way.
Is the pipe below the basement floor, or is it come out in the middle?
You can see it right on the second page. It's right here, you can see it underneath.
So it's underneath the basement floor?
This upper left picture on the second page. Did I see there are two tanks here, correct?
Yes. Because of topography, we elevated by pump tank and then pump.
Okay.
So it feeds from here by gravity,
Yes.
gravity here to here, and then here it's mechanical?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, that's the type I have at my house too, and it also goes under the driveway. And the leachate field also is in the back part of the property as here.
How, it's not a critical question, how deep is this pipe generally?
It shows elevations right on second page. Right here. So ground elevations give you minimum final ground elevation and invert elevation to box, so you can compare how it looks like. It's 143.73 and it's 145.1, so it's, at the entrance it's about 1.5 foot.
And then it goes downgrade to the field, or it stays at a pretty level?
It
Under-
goes downgrade because
No,
it has to
it's-
go
yeah.
to the pump tank back just to prevent freezing in the winter.
No, but I was saying from here to here,
It's
is
not level, it's sloped.
it
back
slopes
to-
all the way down.
Yes,
But that's by the topography,
by topography and by system itself.
by the
because,
system itself. So it's-
Effluent cannot stay in the pump, it has to
Right.
go back to the...
It has to always go back
Yes,
this way.
Yes.
But I guess the point of my question, again, not knowing this completely, is that there's never, over such a long distance, a risk of this freezing?
No, because slope set up that way that will be no effluent. After pumping, all effluent, remaining effluent will go back to pump tank, and then will be pumped again.
Okay. Okay. So this is only the one LUA here, correct? The septic tank being from
Yes.
75 to 50,
And
yes.
sieve analysis at the moment of testing, it was so, ground was so wet that it was impossible to perform traditional percolation testing. So it was just done by sieve analysis to give accurate evaluation of the soil.
Okay.
Two requests. One is the,
Well, I see the two, okay, the particle size
Yeah.
and the distance from the tank. Okay. All right, any comments?
No, I think both the local upgrade approval and the variance request are prudent in this instance.
Okay. Okay. Questions from over there? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a motion on this. Since they're different categories of changes, maybe we should do them separately.
So move the waiver that allows the setback from the septic tank to wetlands from 75 to 50 feet.
Or any further discussion on that, on the waiver? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Move the local upgrade approval so that the particle size analysis in lieu of a field percolation test is acceptable.
All right. Again, any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. So that's the Winter Street question.
Can I show one thing on those plans, because it's going to relate to the next matter on the agenda?
Okay. So we'll leave this open.
So I just want to show you, in this particular instance, they marked out the extent of the wetlands that are here at the time that they did all the work, and that relates to
The next agenda item,
Okay.
because it wasn't done the same way on a future project, so I want to have you see how it should be done.
Okay. Then next address is 110 Farnham Street. And again, that's to Merrimack Engineering. Welcome back.
I can take this out of your way.
Okay.
This property request change variance for soil absorption system from 5 feet to 4 feet to estimated seasonal high water table. And also we request setback for soil absorption system from 100 feet to 63 feet. Because it's most economically feasible way to put soil absorption system. As you can see on back side of the property, pool and two isolated wetlands. So distance in between them, about 140, 150 feet. So if we put soil absorption system in between them, distance from each from each wetland, excuse me, will be less than what we proposed, 63 at the front of the...
There's a wetland here and a wetland here. Okay.
Yes. So if you put the system in between, the distance from corner of the system to the wetland will be less than what we proposed.
Is this something you're adding on now? I didn't see it
This
in
is
our,
a change.
is this a recent change?
Yeah, we just received, this was hand-delivered today at 2:15.
So you're going 63 feet
Yes.
from the wetlands?
Yes. And we have some photographs of the property, so you can see that,
So this is long, this goes all the way back like this, correct?
yes, but it's woods in this area. So we can see backside of the property, how it's set up, so it will be a lot of disturbances for owners to put, besides that distance to the wetland, if we put something to the rear part of the property.
Where, there's something there, where is the current field? Oh, here, okay, right here.
Yes,
So that's just going to be abandoned, and you'll move piping around to the front?
yes. And I have one more picture of the pool in rear property, which is right here.
Okay.
So, in our opinion, that's the most economical way and most appropriate way to put soil absorption system in tanks.
So these are new tanks also then, correct, going in?
Yes.
And in this space, the tanks will be approximately, brick patio it shows, is that somewhere
Yes.
over here?
Yes. Yes.
So the existing tank is
Yeah,
under
this
the brick,
is
under the brick
this out
patio.
here. So it looks like brick patio is kind of over here, that must be the brick patio right there. So it looks like the tanks are going to be sort of out here,
Yeah,
really?
in this area, yes.
Yes, out here.
In this print, the distance from the existing deck to the proposed 1,500-gallon monolithic septic tank is 5 feet. I forgot what the regulations said. I thought it was 12 feet, but...
No, if it's on sonotubes, it's 5 feet
Oh,
from the
okay.
tank.
Okay.
If it's a foundation, it's 10.
Okay, okay.
Is this something that will go through conservation also, or?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Have they looked at this yet, or?
Not yet.
No. And was there a third thing you said, or did we go through the three of them? I'm sorry.
It's right here.
So off of the left-hand corner, you have the variance and the LUAs.
So vertical from 5 feet to 4 feet.
The reason for vertical, we ask for 4 feet because of topography of the site. We don't want runoff from front go to the house, which has full-size finished basement. So we want to keep it at 4 feet just to make sure runoff water will go towards the driveway, not towards the house. If we elevate it 1 foot, all water will go this way towards the house, and we want to prevent it.
Because if you move this to 5 feet, there'd have to be a hill, is that?
Yes, exactly.
What is this line here? The G.
In the minutes of the
Not sure if this one is.
meeting here,
Is that
you
gas?
just have
It's gas
the,
line.
you're looking for an
Going out here, maybe.
septic system to be 4 feet above the ground,
So I don't know.
water where 5 feet is required.
That's water.
Yes.
And here, you're talking about the setback from 50 and 75 feet
First part is right
respectively.
here.
Okay, so you're looking for all of this?
Well, yeah, that was.
Okay, not just what you have here? Okay, got
That was
it,
added on me.
got it. I have it all. Yeah.
Do they have a
Okay.
well on the property at all? Is this town water, or is there an additional well?
There's a
for-
water line here, Larry.
But I mean, is there additional well for irrigation or anything, or just, okay,
What I know.
okay.
Owner is here, he can, no, he can say no.
Dan, did you want to say something here, or?
I have a few observations to share if the board wishes. So, two parts to discuss. One, the wetland resource area that is identified. When Merrimack Engineering submitted their application for soil testing in early May, the Conservation Commission informed them that there could very well be wetlands on or near this property. When their first set of engineering plans were submitted and we reviewed them, it showed no wetlands. And one of our review comments was, please double check and see if there are wetlands or not. And frankly, it should have been identified back in May when the Conservation Commission suggested they look into it. It wasn't. We said you should double check this. They then submitted a set of revised plans that showed approximate wetland location. And we looked at it again and said, please review this with the Conservation Commission. We're not sure this is accurate. And the wetlands are now 100 feet closer to where the septic system is proposed than where Merrimack Engineering identified it previously. I don't believe that's good engineering practice. That should have been identified by the engineering firm right up front before this whole process started, and let alone then when we had suggested that they look and meet with the Conservation Commission. They chose not to do that, and they just approximated where the wetlands are. And it's only until 2:15 this afternoon that they actually met with the Conservation Commission, apparently, and looked at and figured out exactly where the wetlands are, and have presented a plan for review. So that's a concern. Procedurally, that's a real concern, because I think the town was very clear to the engineering firm, you should look into this, and they chose not to look into it. So that's one issue. And then related to that is we got a set of plans at 2:30 this afternoon. We haven't had a chance to look at them as well. I imagine they don't vary too significantly from what was designed previously, but we haven't had a chance to look at those.
You
So
haven't evaluated it yet?
No, this has not been sent out to Mill River, that we just received it.
Well, we have a process here, and this board does not have expertise in all of these matters. And so what we do is we have consultants who do have expertise, and we pay those consultants to advise us. So I'm not comfortable in putting forward something that has not been properly vetted by the consultants that we pay. So I have a problem with that too.
I can explain, I agree with everything Dan said, but when we received the job, it was March, and it was still snow, and it was very difficult to identify those two wetlands, which was not obvious at all. But
It appears, and correct me if I'm mistaken, that the wetlands are one in the back of the property, and two, not on the property, outside the property. So the area here, where you have the structure, the proposed septic system, so there's no wetlands there at all. It's all here.
yes, that's correct.
So it's not complete. Dan, you haven't given us your final stamp yet.
we have not
We haven't
reviewed a set
evaluated.
of,
Yeah.
set of plans. That is correct. That is correct.
So we're still in the beginning stage of the vetting process.
I wouldn't say we're at the beginning stage, but we're at a stage that the engineering firm has gotten us to. This is not the town's responsibility. The town has been very clear, both through the conservation agent and through the health department, that we think there's likely wetlands out there.
And this was made clear to them in May when there wasn't snow on the ground.
And when the soil test application was submitted in May, correct. And then again, when we reviewed the septic design plan the first time and the second time.
But now we're in agreement with Conservation Commission about the exact location of wetlands, so we're going to step on that part.
Okay, great.
Dan, would you go over that again? Are you or are you not comfortable with this print that has been given to us as far as the location of the wetlands, which, again, according to, you know, what we have here, the back of the property and outside the property? Do you need additional time to look into this, or are you comfortable with what we have?
We have, I can't say I'm comfortable with it because we haven't looked at it. Just arrived this afternoon,
haven't
haven't
done
had a
review
chance
of
to
this
look at it.
Plan here.
How long would that take you? Because if we deny, I mean, he's going to have to wait another month.
Yes, I understand. So that's part of the complexity of the whole situation. And that's my frustration, not with the individual engineer, but the engineering firm. Had they heeded the town's advice from the get-go, this board wouldn't be in the awkward position that you're exactly describing. So that's a bit of the problem that we're facing this evening.
Because I've looked at it, and as some of you know, I mean, I've worked with systems as such for much of my life, so I'm quite familiar with this, even though, you know, I haven't done it for quite some time. It does appear to be reasonable what he's proposing, but I'm uncomfortable with the location of the wetlands because you haven't properly vetted it yet. Is there any way, Tom, that we could vote on this pending his?
Right. What we can do is we can delegate.
Okay.
We can delegate.
Okay.
We can delegate our approval to the chairman, who will, after being advised by our
We
consultant.
did something similar to that 2 months ago,
Right.
that we would approve these requests pending, stamp isn't really the right word, but a final review and overall confirmation of the validity of the remainder of the plan.
It would be to your advantage, or any engineering firm's advantage, to make sure Mill River does the final review before you come before the board. Not just you, but I mean anybody out there listening. This is not the way we work. I don't like it, but, you know, again, we don't want the homeowner waiting a month either. But in the future, since you're coming before us with 6 hours' notice, please next time make sure it's all vetted through Mill River.
Come up to the podium.
That's all.
Yeah, and some of these numbers here too, again, I don't know what, I don't remember all the numbers, but it looks like an edge of the leachate field is 10 feet from the street. I don't know if that is acceptable or not.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think the risk, and you're the homeowner, correct?
Yes, that's
the
correct.
risk that we're at here is that we can approve these, but if, in review, if our consultant, finds concerns that aren't covered by this, then it becomes sort of moot. You have to start over again, so to speak. We have to come back if there were other things that were identified, correct?
That's a possibility, correct.
I'm not saying it is, but that's kind of the risk here. But go ahead.
Just make 2 points, please. With respect to the wetlands that were just identified that are near the tanks, the engineer did walk the whole property and did notice that wetlands at the rear of the property. But if you were to walk in that area where they've identified wetlands near the tanks, it is perfectly dry. I think the botanists found that there were wetland-type plants there, but it's perfectly dry, and I've never noticed water pooling there, and I've been there 37 and a half years. So, and it's not near any body of water or anything like that.
Well, what it is, I understand that. Our consultant hasn't had an opportunity to review the changes to the plans. That's the problem.
Yeah, my understanding is that the only change that was made to the plan was to move the pipe closer to the house so there'd be further distance from the wetland, and that's the only change to the plan.
We need his stamp.
I understand that. I'm just
Mill
trying to
River
make this
stamp
point.
of
Yeah.
approval.
I understand
They have
that.
to approve it. I understand what you're saying, of course.
Well, I don't think this board should micromanage this problem. I think we'll delegate the authority to Tom to approve the plans if there are no unexpected findings.
Yeah, because I don't want to vote on numbers if they're not.
Yeah. So
So the verbiage somehow has to, you know, go in front of the board with conservation, and maybe the verbiage can reflect that as well.
Well, I think what we're just going to do is we're going to delegate the decision to Tom because we're not going to keep these poor people waiting a month.
Yeah.
So I just move that we delegate the decision on this to Tom after consultation with our consultant.
Second.
Thanks, Frank.
It's good to be king, Tom.
But this isn't what we like, though. This is not the way to do it. But, Tom, it's your show.
That's fine. You made a motion, vote on it.
You have to call for it.
I'll call for a vote on that motion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, there you go. Which one of you seconded that?
I did. Joe did.
Joe did.
I have a question related to this project. It's similar to the next one. If it would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for me to ask the engineer about it, because it's related to this, or if you're not comfortable, that's fine as well.
No, that's,
Okay.
we're here and he's here.
Okay. So one of the items being requested is a reduction of the height of the system as was discussed, right? So from 5 feet to the water table down to 4 feet to the water table, which makes sense. I understand your request, and you're saying it's to reduce the disturbance on the site and to not have the grading change the way it does. But you end up, you've engineered a leach field that's bigger than it needs to be. And I'm wondering why that is the case. So there's nothing in the regulations that prohibits this, but if the reasoning for reducing the height is to minimize disturbance on the site, which I can understand, I would think that the applicant would propose the leach field that has the least disturbance, not one that's larger than it needs to be. So I'm trying to rationalize what your thought process is.
We would like to just provide additional capacity if possible. That's what it is. Distance wouldn't change much if it would be 32 chambers or 42 chambers.
Okay.
That's what my reasoning.
Dan, can you just quickly walk us through the, I mean, we're familiar with the 110 gallons per room and so on, but when you're talking about what you're referring to here, so we're...
Yes. So it's essentially a formula, as you said, it's 110 gallons per bedroom, depending on the soil. You do a multiplication, and you end up with a number of square feet of leaching facility that's required. That's the minimum. So Title V is a minimum engineering standard. Someone can go larger than that, and that's could be prudent engineering. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. In this instance, but they're also saying we don't want to disturb the site, so we want to be lower in the ground. And we're wondering, well, if you don't want to disturb the site and be lower in the ground, why make it bigger than it needs to be? So that's.
And just so I understand, where are you seeing that? I see the minimum size is 595 here. So just by the size of how it's described, the 6 by 7, is that?
It's right here, 595. It's should tell the amount of chambers and then provided amount of chambers.
They're providing 795 square feet instead of 595.
Effective area provided, okay.
Correct.
All right, I just wanted to follow what you're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I think the cost of construction would be less. The variances that are being sought would potentially be less if this was, and the rationalization for granting the reduced height because there's less disturbance is more justifiable. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm wrestling with.
So that's a question for you, not for us.
Yeah, it's good you discussed this now. I mean,
Yeah, I understand, but
he's right here.
You have to come up here, please.
If you look at the topography of where the house is and where the road is, there's like a valley shape. And what I think they're trying to do is make it level all the way across so that you don't have a big dip as you hit the driveway. They're trying to bring it down on a grade as best they can, and that's the only reason I could think why they would stretch it out that way. Because they are confined by the water pipe on one end and the gas pipe on the other end. So, I mean, there's only so far they can go anyway.
But I guess, since we're talking, does that have to be done by the size of the leach field? Couldn't you do that with fill? The leach field is more expensive than fill, isn't it?
Yes.
So we are talking about 10 chambers, it's about 10 feet. We can just cut 10 feet, but what difference does it make if owners have more capacity? And I think that's advantage for them.
The future buyer as well. If the future buyer wanted to add a room, I presume, it would be more
that's
difficult
what
for the future buyer to expand out. Am I wrong?
Exactly, it's advantage for future
They,
of the house.
Right, so again, I understand justification for it, but I think it puts the board in an awkward position because they're asking for permission to reduce the height. It's special permission, they're asking for it to reduce the height so they don't disturb the lot as much, yet they're disturbing the lot more than they need to. Right, so and I don't think personally, I don't think they've justified the reasoning for it, except maybe, it's certainly not in writing, perhaps in that verbal discussion today. So it's,
Vertically it will be the same anyway. I mean, same variance.
yes.
No matter what size of the systems.
Right. So it's germane to the next application as well, and it's something that relates to the factors that the board makes in weighing this decision. So I wanted to bring this up, so I'm sorry for delaying your meeting, Mr. Chairman, but I thought it was germane.
Okay. Can pass that one back then.
Can they say, no, money, like, how much is it a lot?
These are your pictures, I think? You,
Is it $1,000? Is it
$2,000?
I would easily think so, 200 square feet of sand and chambers.
Trying to figure out how much they could save.
They could save if they.
Yeah, it'd be several $1,000s at least, of savings, I would think.
yeah, I would,
And this is common, right? This is-
all right, then we have a third.
Yes. Now this is a walk-up. 70 Valley Tavern Lane.
Again, Merrimack Engineering.
So in this situation, to my opinion, location of soil absorption system, the only way possible to do on this side. Because side surrounded on rear part by wetland all the way around. And
This is the build zone is the distance from wetland here?
yes.
Okay.
And any placement inside will bring system much closer to the wetland. And two more restrictions apply to the system here. It's 10 foot, 15 feet actually to property line and 10 foot to the water line. System cannot be closer to the water line than it is now. So that's the only way, and it brings us to 84 feet from the wetland, which we request variance from 100 feet by town to 84 feet. And also, if we bring it to 4 feet here vertically, it will be necessary for the system to be pump installation, because gravity in this case will not work if we raise the soil absorption system. So it will create additional at least $10,000 burden on the owner to install pump and with all corresponding labor and materials and raising soil absorption system. So that will request both location as it is at 84 feet and location vertically 3 feet from estimated high water table.
Wait, this is Raleigh Tavern Lane. That's the wrong letter.
No, I'm comparing something.
Okay.
Dan, can you help me with something here? I want to make sure I'm not confused. In this previous one, we talked about 5 feet to 4 feet on groundwater, but here they're showing 4 feet to 3. Why was it 5 feet set here and 4 feet here?
Wonderful question. Excellent observation. So on rapidly flowing soils like sand, the rules say that the bottom of the leach field has to be 5 feet from the groundwater table because the sewage goes through the sand so quickly there's less time for treatment. So they want to have 5 feet of separation. Any of the soil that's not sand, if it's got some silt or clay in it, then the rules say to have a 4-foot separation.
Okay.
That's different soil papers.
I just roughed it out, so it can't move over here because, again, of the 100-foot buffer zone here, it'd be more contained in that system.
And also water line.
Oh, there's a water line there, okay. So I guess I'll take the lead and ask the same question. I look over here and see the size here. You showed the leaching field size required would be 622, and you're showing this is 795 here. Is there a reason, again, for the increased size of the field?
Just for capacity in future of the house. They want
For
to
capacity and what, I'm sorry?
For future of the house, if they want to expand or something, they will have still capacity, not to rebuild the system and put additional $10,000 or so dollars.
So when it's designed that way, does the homeowner understand that difference going from the 6 to the, I mean, you just talked about $1,000 difference in this because of this distance here, the financial difference in going from 622 to 795 for the next owner, if they maybe want to put another room on the house?
It's different issues. For now, if they have 622 or 795, it's not going to be a big difference. But in future, if they want to put additional room, that 795 might be enough for additional room to provide the adequate capacity of the system.
Are you also asking, does the current homeowner understand that they're paying for a larger system?
Yeah, that's what I'm
versus
asking.
The required system?
Correct.
Okay. Do they know they're paying for it?
I believe so.
The owner is here.
This is Walter Stoll.
What does your checkbook say?
I've heard everything from $50,000 to $60,000 for a system. I've been there for almost 50 years, never had a problem with my septic system. So I want to be a law-abiding, good system. In my neighborhood, a lot of them, I've heard a lot of stories, I've listened to you guys, it's kind of interesting, I've sort of been there.
Could you please step up?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I guess I think I know everything, but I don't, obviously. I don't know your job, you're professionals, you're great. And I appreciate all you're doing. I don't know what to say. I probably should use my wife's advice and shut my mouth.
We're just asking, do you understand that you're paying, it requires 622 square feet for the leachate area, and it's going to be 795 square feet. So you're paying additional monies for
I'd be
larger.
happy to do that if you get me out the door right away.
I was just asking if you were aware that you're paying a higher.
How would I know what the price is going to be? I have no way. These guys are the experts. I respect your advice and theirs, and as I said, I'd like to be a law-abiding, good citizen. I've been there 46 years. I haven't had a problem with my bathroom, my toilet. I guess I'm overconstipated. And I'm looking for a solution. And I hope you guys can come up with it. What you want to do with me. I'd be happy to pay another $1,000 a month in here. I have no idea what this is going to cost me. I'm a retired teacher. Do you think I've got a lot of money?
Well, that's part of why we're asking this question, I think.
I think it's wonderful, and I hope you can save me some money. If the guy...
But that question should go to your engineer or your builder, not us. We don't know the difference in the cost from 622 to 795. He did make a statement of looking to save $1,000 pretty clearly on something over here. So he gave, there was a sense given of a cost savings at one point, but we can't tell you, because we don't build systems, of the difference from going 622 to 795. So the point we're trying to make here is this is a system that, this is a plan that we hadn't looked at ahead of time and has come to us, so we're asking these questions.
I think it's wonderful.
And part of the process is you would have that.
I'm glad you allowed me to enter into this discussion, and I've had 2 estimates on this already, and they're $1,000 apart. Well, my wife says, that's no problem, take the cheapest one. I said, wait a minute, let's go through the hearing and, see what we come up with. I have no idea what it's going to cost me. I really don't. I mean, I've got estimates on this. Yes, you want to know what I have for estimates? I could tell you, but...
Well, that's not really germane.
Well, it's supposed to be germane to me, you say.
No, the total isn't germane. The germane questions is there's a difference between what's required. We talked about laws. I mean, in essence, the law requires 622. They're showing you 795.
So that's over design, is that what you're saying? That's what I guess...
Well, no, that's what's written down here. That's what we have
How do
here.
I know?
Well, that's what your engineer designed for you.
What we provide, yes. It's a little bit more, but I think will work for every point.
Isn't it
Yeah,
all right
that's-
to have a little bigger one?
No,
Okay, so I'm
it's
gonna pay-
25% more, it's not 5%.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay, how would I have a system in there right now, okay? Right there. This is a replacement for my old system in the same place. I thought they did pretty well to come up with this, because I don't know what the hell I'd do. I'd have to move out of town, I guess. There's no place to put a new system in place of the old one, unless I dig up the old one.
That's not the question we're asking. The question we're asking is that in the design, there's a standard, and then there's a design above that. And you don't have to answer this question to us. This is not our question to you.
Why would you care if it's a little more? You're trying to save me money? Okay, that sounds good.
Well, we care because part of the reason that we're being asked to make a variance on how that leach field is positioned, and by reducing it, it may mitigate that a bit.
That would be good, I guess. You think it would be good, I guess? That's why you're asking the question.
Yes.
So of him, I have to go get another one to contest him, or you, or?
No, we're not saying that. This is a question for you with your engineer, and these are things that have come up because we hadn't seen this beforehand, so nobody on the board had seen this. So these are things we're just asking you. This question here has nothing to do with us approving, other than the fact that he asked for a vertical offset difference from the minimum of 4 to reduce it to 3 because of cost factors.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't have to install pump system, but difference in square footage wouldn't be that much, because machinery already there. It's already has to be excavated over there, so put additional 100 square feet. I don't think it's going to be a big difference in price.
Dan, have you looked at this yet?
Yes.
Do you have any problems with it?
From an engineering perspective, no. There are the 2 variances that they're requesting. And again, one of those variances is the distance from the leach field to the wetland. And if the leach field was the size that Title V says it would be less of a variance. They would still need a variance, but it would be less of a variance. So that's something to weigh. And then the second is the distance that they're requesting to keep it closer in the ground, and I understand the reasoning for it. Again, there's some prudence to it. So that part generally makes sense. It's mostly, why is it bigger? If it could be smaller and reduce the variance, is that worth doing? That's the question that I still wrestle with.
Well, as a taxpayer in North Andover for almost 50 years, everything I hear, I respect your advice and all the work that volunteers do for the town. And I know you're going to come up with a good solution for me. It sounds like the gentleman was a real expert, I guess you're the advisor to the board. I don't know who you are, but
He's a consultant on these type of systems. He's our town contracted consultant.
okay. I appreciate all that you're doing, trying to help me out of the pickle.
That's exactly what it is. We're looking at what we can do, and we're also looking out for you too.
Well, thank you.
Is this are you selling this house? How did this sort of come up? What's the?
That gets complicated.
We're not looking for personal details. Is this a house for sale or?
Oh, no, we have put the house on the market.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I'm 83 years old. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I have family in other towns around, Georgetown, Newburyport. They keep wanting us to move, so we talk about it. But we have put a sign up for sale, okay? In fact, I love North Andover.
So what I'm saying, did you go into failure? How did this all come about?
No, there's no record of mine. Well,
no, I'm just asking, you just want to replace it?
I think that's, well, I take some advice from your professional who said, you know, there aren't many systems in town that have gone this long.
Probably, I'm not familiar with details, but probably it was an old system which time already requires to replace it.
It's been there for.
Can you tell us how this came?
I could answer that because it's a Title V question. The gentleman had a voluntary Title V done, which means there's no paperwork submitted to the health department, but inquiry, because he knows me and we had discussions, he knew it was failed because the Title V inspection failed in a voluntary sense. And the reason that is allowed by Title V is because some people may not sell their house after that. Once we get that Title V inspection form failed, you have to have it replaced within, or repaired, or whatever issue within 2 years. So by choosing not to file paperwork, he had a longer time, but he knew in his mind that he would need to contact a professional engineer at some point. So that's the answer to that question.
A simple answer to a simple question.
I've known her for a while. She is very good.
Thank you, sir.
I wouldn't agree with everything she says, but all.
There you go.
Well, that would be bad if you did.
And I know you said you retired, money may be an issue of concern, but this is not that complicated, and I can assure you not nearly as expensive as the two other systems that we looked at earlier this
Well,
evening.
that sounds good to me at 83. I don't know who's going to pay for it. I hope I'll still be around.
That's between you and him.
Tell buyers they have to pay.
Yeah, I would do whatever I can to. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and your chairman can agree with that. And I want it done right, and I appreciate your time, and I know I'm taking too
And
much
you've
of it.
given quite a bit to the town for your service, and
Well,
always appreciated, yes.
That's long ago.
I
Thank
know,
goodness.
I remember.
I'm impressed with the years I've been around, with all the professionalism we bring.
Thank you, sir.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to,
Thank you very much, by the way. Thank you.
I'd like to move the North Andover waiver setback from the SAS to the wetland from 100 feet to 84 feet.
Second. All right, any further discussion? And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye. I'd like to move the local upgrade approval requesting vertical offset from the SAS to the ESWT from 4 feet to 3 feet.
Second?
Again, any discussion? And those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Just a
Thank you.
comment on what the members of the Board of Health had received, I believe yesterday, regarding this upgrade to the septic system at this address. Reading through it, it says, failure to grant the request would be manifestly unjust considering all relevant facts and circumstances. A passive-aggressive comment did raise a red flag with me. It's not necessary to write like this going forward.
Is that regarding my request?
I believe it was.
Can I know where that came from, please? I mean, evidence you received must have to come from somewhere, and I need to know.
It was in language that I would just consider unprofessional and accusatory. It was very poor form.
I'm sorry, I didn't know about this letter. I will
Yeah.
talk to Bill and I will make sure that everything.
This is
It raised a red flag with me. Because we've seen some of these saying, well, you know, you may not know what you're talking about, boys and girls, members of the Board of Health, and we're all volunteers. We try our best to address health and safety issues of concern. This is our community too.
Yeah, we don't
And
need
it
a-
shouldn't be written like
We don't
that.
need a motion in here from your company. We don't need a motion, we just want the facts, and then we'll make our decision based on the facts and our opinion and the opinion of our engineer, but we don't want a motion. We don't want a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I have to thank you for all your
Thank you very much. Good luck with your new project.
Night, welcome.
Dan, can I ask you a question about estimated water table and how freely we allow those approvals? It seems like we don't object, and you don't object terribly to that change of a foot. Is there some change in the distance that at which we're not allowed to waive it? So where is that range that's best practice, okay practice, not allowable practice?
That's a very good.
If he said, if just take everything off of here, and if he said from 4 feet to 2.5 or 2, and this isn't specific to this, but just in general, is there some point at which it becomes bad?
So, wonderful question. So, Title V has engineering standards, and the goal of an applicant and a town is to always comply whenever possible. They also realize we're dealing with often fixing up existing houses, and sometimes you can't meet those standards, and so they give a kind of priority pecking order of this is the one that you should think about first because it has the least public health impact, and then it goes all the way down to the one that has the most potential risk to public health, and those are all called local upgrade approvals. What they say, and the last one on that list, is reducing the groundwater offset. And what it allows an applicant to request is permission to reduce it by 1 foot from what is requested, what's specified in the regulations. If they, for some reason, want to be more than a foot closer to the water table, then the regulations say it's a whole different application process. It's a variance, which is a higher standard of review than what we saw in this particular project, a local upgrade approval. So to answer your question, they asked for the most that you can get, which is a 1 foot reduction from the standard.
But if they had said from 4 to 2.5, it would have been,
It would be a variance, and they would require a butter notification, and they have to prove hardship. There'd be a lot higher standard of review.
but that's still a town control thing.
Yes.
Is there some point at which it has to go to the state, or is that always a local decision?
It is always a local decision. Up until about a year ago, a decision like that would have been made by the Municipal Board of Health and then double-checked by the State Department of Environmental Protection. Due to staffing shortages, they've decided if the decision is made at the municipal level, they're no longer going to also review it at the state level. So it's only decided at the municipal level. Yes.
Good, thank you.
Can I just make a comment? Going forward.
You should come.
Yes.
There are thousands of people watching, so you want to be heard well.
Yeah, and they'll watch it over and over.
No, it's,
Going forward, I now realize there was some communication gaps that really created problems. And I'm wondering, when you issue your report, you just sent it to the engineer. Maybe, had I gotten it, I would have been saying, what have you done about this? You know, and I think we wouldn't have had to be here tonight. You know, so I would just suggest that when your report goes, it goes to the homeowner too.
So it does, the approval does go to the homeowner.
Right, but the initial, you know, just kind of a checklist of what should have been
Lisa,
followed
did the
up
denial go to
on.
them as well? Denial went to everyone.
And the approval letter goes to both the engineer and the homeowner.
Yeah.
Okay, there,
The town did generate several letters related to your project that went to your address as well as to the engineering company.
That's the last thing we're going to do, yeah.
we didn't receive them. So, okay, all right, thank you.
So, and just with your question, and Dan, when you finish your review of the system that you just received today, does your review also go to the homeowner?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll be getting Mill River's evaluation.
It'll come through our office.
It's from the town. For
So
example,
it'll
we
be
sent
from
a
the
letter on June 19th to Merrimack Engineering Services. You're 110 Farnham Street, is that right? Copied to Jack Burns. Is that you? Or you? Okay, well,
Oh, there was one that came today.
okay, I don't know what that was, but it is common practice whenever a property owner, an engineer gets.
I was just thinking I would go down and hand deliver everything just to keep things moving and everything. And I was always told that, you know, I had done everything I could. That, you know, Bill would talk with you and everything would be resolved. Had I been a part of some of this communication, I just think a lot of problems would have been prevented.
Perhaps
I
that.
would go in and hand it in and say, is there anything else I should be doing? And I was told no.
Right, because the
And
question.
hearing that there wasn't follow-up on the key questions.
But they're technical in nature, so unfortunately, it's not something the engineer would have to
I
address.
could have gone to the engineer and said, have you taken care of
Right,
this?
right. Well, again, the town did send at least 2 letters to the engineering company that were copied to your house.
In common practice in the office, it's not that the homeowner come into the office and deliver the plans anyway. And Merrimack Engineering is the only company that does that. The other engineering companies deal with our engineer. Yeah. So they deal with it up front and through us and through our engineering people. So it's not common practice the way that Merrimack, their protocol in our office. Sometimes having too many people involved too.
There could have been better communication throughout this whole process.
Yeah, technically, the engineer, the engineer is the person that you hire, and they are the people that guide you through the process and help you with everything. They're the people that you do hire, and they are the people that you go to when you have a question. That's protocol.
I don't know why they didn't receive them, though.
Yeah.
It's
We're doing all our
unfortunate they didn't
technical
receive them. They went
evaluations.
out.
Mill River does their technical evaluations. The office does what they need to do to get the system going and to make sure the plans are accurate and legal. And that normally wouldn't involve you coming in or any type of communication like that. You get the final letters from Mill River and so forth. Everything you need to communicate is between you, really, and your engineering firm. Like we just got the plans today, so now we have to have it evaluated by our own engineers that we hire to do it. So that's why we couldn't vote on it. Not enough. 6 hours isn't enough time. So that's why we're just seeing this today as you probably are too.
But it's a point well taken, so thank you. If we can move on to the next, there's a little bit of a segue here then into communications and discussion. Not that we need much discussion on this, but germane to some recent reviews like this and in discussion with Dan and the new Economic Development Director, we have found a few clauses and parts of our local septic regulation that we have been pretty routinely, I'll say, waiving, that we've had some early conversations, and was it 2 years ago we relooked at
2010.
2010? So
Updated it, yeah.
we updated the regulations, so there are a few things that we think we probably ought to relook at again. Things like, again, these processes and the timing, but especially, again, things that we've been routinely not following, that it would seem to be best practice for us to look at things like that and consider taking them out of our current regulations. So we don't have even a timeline in place for that, but again, it's just sort of a start of a process. Dan and Michelle and Susan and I have talked a little bit about that, but I think we'll spend a little time with Dan and look at things like that over the next month or two, and then maybe the next month we can talk about when we would need to have a hearing, because again, this should, being a regulation, should be something we'd have to have a public hearing on. So that's just kind of a communication point for starters. But I think, you know, the more we talk about the regulations is good. I wouldn't have, that's really very interesting to hear about the water table issues and why things happen the way that they do and where that comes in. So, good. Thank you.
Speaking of water, do you want to talk about today?
You can, but why don't you talk about today? We all saw pictures, but we have a communication. It's obviously now a matter of public notice, so
Yeah.
Susan called me very early this morning about a field trip she took.
We were contacted by numerous people, actually, but the police department that a trash truck had gone into the lake at Flats Bridge. We didn't have a lot of information, except that I knew that DEP was on their way. Fire, police had already responded. So Michelle and I were already on our way to work, so we met there. Quite an assembly of professionals, I have to say. Emergency response from DEP was there. The chief and lieutenant of fire departments, multiple officers. They had the roads blocked off. Many of you probably saw it as you drove by. Didn't know what was going on down there. But the pictures, if you haven't seen them, there are some incredible video from the helicopter, which when we were standing there was circling above. The group assembled, discussed different things between DEP, fire, and police, myself, and water department was there, superintendent and such. And a couple of things, you know, were talked about, and one was public notification. So when it was appropriate, a robocall was sent out to the residents, and anybody who didn't get the robocall, it's more than likely you don't have a landline, and you can sign up at the police department online if you would choose to get that, because some people wonder why they're not called, and that's why they're not on the list. So they have to actually place themselves on the list. So the call did allay fears that anything had leaked from the truck that possibly wasn't contained, that it actually was contained. It really, in a sense, was almost the worst and best case scenario, to have a truck almost fully submerged, fully loaded with trash, fuel. The driver, we don't know his condition, but we were told it was minimal injuries, which is amazing. And to have minimal release, and that's the DEP's basic assessment, that minimal release of fuel. So that the booms were put out, and they had to hire the company. I'm sorry, there was JRM. They're responsible to hiring, the cleanup crew, and responsible for anything else that might occur, anything that fire department used and such, that they'll certainly be replacing that. And they did arrive on scene. So from a health department point of view, we did confirm that they were permitted properly. If anyone saw a picture that said 2013, it's actually the impact on the stone wall ripped off the 2015.
The 5.
Believe it or not.
Only
But
the
you
5.
could see,
the 3.
you could see the black outline of the top of the 5. So they were permitted to come into the town to go to, the trash plants. We don't know whether they had a placard. The windshield was pushed out, and there was anything that was in that windshield would have gone down, but the assumption is they hopefully had a placard. There's no way to determine one way or the other, so no fines were issued regarding placards and travel, as far as our point of view from the health departments and from your regulations on trash truck routes. So I don't know if you have any questions, but it was quite an event.
One of the emails you said, in terms of
Yeah.
a bigger picture health perspective, you
Yes.
indicated that it was relatively confirmed that there was no risk of the water intake contamination from fuel or other leakage.
Quite a long way. I don't know if it's a mile, but it's somewhat close to probably a mile
And around
from,
a bend.
and around a bend to the water treatment plant from Flatsbridge. So it may be the easiest place to have a vehicle go in to the lake, but it's almost the farthest place for the intake. So that is in our favor. And the amount, they really, and it's a floating type, chemical, petroleum. There's not a lot that is heavy. So it doesn't go under the booms and down. But they will, as a precaution, and advice from DEP and other professionals, they will, and they being the water treatment plant, will increase certain testing for, I think they said a week, possibly. I don't know exactly what they're testing for, but whatever chemicals they believe would be VOCs that
yeah.
would be related to petroleum or oil. So
The vehicle did contain trash, and it was on its side. Fortunately, we have a water purification plant. So all the water that us residents drink in North Andover from Lake Cochituate is first purified. If there was not that purification plant in place, I'd be really concerned. But because we do have that plant, I'm not concerned.
great.
Susan, was a trash truck, it was a closed system then,
Yes.
where the trash was.
And luckily,
So it
the
was
back
you get
door
the
was
box,
closed
and it
as
was
well.
closed. So that's,
Yeah, and no one was fishing.
and the, I
It was the
think-
exact location where fishermen
Everybody
generally
fishes
stand.
right there.
Okay.
Yesterday, I drove by and there was a gentleman that was pulling out a bass, largemouth bass.
Standing there.
Had to have been 18 inches long, just standing exactly where.
Wow. So,
Yeah, the picture I saw, looked at the, whatever you call it, that back arm, the compactor thing appeared to be closed, so there was really no distribution of trash
Correct.
around the body of the lake.
Or a
So-
dumpster or something, or like a large construction. it would
That
have been
portion of
terrible.
130,
Yeah.
that portion of 133 Great Pond Road is a state highway. So I don't remember, I think there was a wooden guardrail before that. I mean, that's more or less useless for a truck with that much weight.
Yeah. I remember a while back, and I think it was after one of the floods, I think there was discussion of, being able to handle letting the water overflow from Ray's pond and
Yeah.
letting it go across, so they were keeping a gap rather than having what happened before, whatever, with the flooding and the road got, washed out. So maybe they put that there on purpose. I'm not, DPW, I'm sure, or whoever the state decided. I'm not sure there was a comment by someone said, I don't think any guardrail would have held that thing back.
Yeah.
But I
Right.
agree, it was just wood. I remember that.
So I don't know how much authority we have on this matter, but, I mean, obviously it's trash, but it's not what would be considered hazardous materials. I've gone through tunnels and bridges and things like that that have signs, no hazmat. Now, obviously, somebody with hazmat who's in there, you're not going to inspect every vehicle that goes over a certain roadway, but I imagine that there are very serious and very punitive consequences to having a problem than finding out that you're carrying hazmat. Is there any way, or should we look into whether hazmat should be allowed on that stretch of road? I mean, it's a public water supply.
I'm sure it's, I mean,
I'm
I
not
can't
sure
say
if
it
that's
hasn't been
within our
explored. I don't
purview.
know. I could check with, yeah, it is a state road, as you said, and we have always been concerned about that location. And interesting enough that Jeff Coker, the Emergency Management Director, told us, we have been working here a long time, but apparently in the late 80s, around 88, they actually did a full-scale exercise, and they did have a chemical that they put in that did not hurt the reservoir, but they had a full-scale, it was something that would sink and expand, and they had a full-scale exercise on how they were going to handle that.
And come back up.
So, but the question, right.
Come back up.
Right. Yeah, it was very interesting to hear about that.
We
I don't
did
know.
analyze the trash in the truck to make sure there wasn't.
I don't know if we left.
I know that
after the trip.
there'll be an investigation on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
they
yeah,
should
we can only speculate on the cause. I mean, whether it was
Right.
distracted driving or
We don't
loss
know.
of
Right.
brakes, or we can only speculate. But I would hope that this person be tested for drugs and alcohol
To the
and,
hospital, he will be, it's an automatic, from what we understood, it was an
Yep.
automatic that he would be
There
tested.
was an actual employee of JRM, it wasn't a
Yes.
stolen vehicle?
No.
Okay. All right, well,
well, let's let the process move.
Because the solid waste in the vehicle was contained in the area will look clean. But what I'd be concerned about, if anything at all, is what had leached from the truck, because there is trash from hundreds and hundreds of people in that truck, and people throw away a lot of stuff. At times, they shouldn't be throwing away certain things. They may or may not know that, and I'd be concerned about what perhaps had leached from
That was
the
brought
truck.
up to.
Fortunately,
to
again,
DEP.
we have that water purification system, which is very good.
Are they going to hold the trash?
I don't know about that. It was brought up by, not myself, but someone else, to DEP and the licensed site professional. Whether or not they did anything after we left, I don't know. But they made the decisions on those types of things.
So this is
There-
basically
there is
DEP's.
LSP.
This is really informational for us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's out in the public now.
That's a good question about what should or shouldn't go near the reservoir, and it's difficult because it's a very used road, you know.
Right,
And
it's
we're
a-
just talking about trash trucks, but
It's a
as you said,
state
what
highway.
about the other ones?
What about the other ones? Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, like I said, they are banned from important structures like the tunnel that goes underneath the main artery in Boston, and, you know, other places that are like that. So if,
That's a good point.
question could be asked.
let's ask the question. I'm asking the question.
I see. Okay. Thumbs up.
Okay. One more quick communication item I'll put out there. Last month, we talked a bit about how this Board of Health could play, learn, explore roles in the local opiate/heroin, I think we could, well, we use the word here, crisis or epidemic or problems that are going on locally. So one of the selectmen, Phil DiCalgero, has had a lot of interest in this, both at professional and his municipal role. So he and I have talked maybe half a dozen times since the last meeting. He started explorations and talking with other people and reached out and made some contacts. So I sent an email earlier this week. So a meeting has been put together at a very starting level tomorrow morning that will bring together people from youth services, police, fire, Diana DeZoglio, Phil, and Ed volunteered to attend from our group.
He can't attend.
Yes,
Oh, we can.
he told me, yeah, he said he.
Oh, I got an email from him this afternoon saying that he had something come up.
Oh, well,
That was tonight.
I'm,
Oh, that
yeah,
was
for
tonight.
tonight.
He said he couldn't be here tonight.
Oh, okay. I thought it meant for tomorrow.
Right. I had a conversation with Cheryl Barzak.
I thought it was for tomorrow, too.
And so she and I and probably Deborah are going to go. We really would like to be involved.
I think somebody from our board or
Deborah
our
and I
department
went
should be
to a
there.
meeting yesterday, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services was there. And she actually chaired this governor's
Governor's task force.
Task force that just came out this week with their recommendations. It was a very interesting, the meeting was not strictly about that, but it was very interesting comments that have come out. There's 65 recommendations. They know that
I didn't see that.
they know that you can't just throw in 65 things and get them done, but what it does is it gives a framework to groups like what we're forming. So this group that we're forming has now like a framework to look at, and they're very just doable, active things, like starting with a group and then going from there, whatever it is. So now that the governor has, come out with that, it's perfect timing that you start.
One of the things we've talked about, Phil and I, is to not repeat a lot of work of things that happened at other places. There's a lot of interest being generated, and a lot of talking, a lot of conversation. The Eagle Tribune had a very nice series, and it's actually continuing on, sort of highlighted articles about this, but sometimes you find, this town and that town and groups and here and there, if everybody's doing the same thing, it may not be particularly helpful or resource efficient. So again, nobody comes in, I think, with any answers, but there's people that have a stake in what's going on, and I think it'll just, again, be a start of the conversation, and I'm sure it won't be the first, it'll be the first, but won't be the final meeting. So Phil has attended several meetings locally. There was a big meeting in Salem, Mass recently, and a lot of things going on, but I think for many people right now, it's one thing that was a highlight to me of that series of 3 articles that came from the Eagle Tribune was that the most success came from personal attachments. That the people that were highlighted in those articles, it was family going back to that person over and over and over again and getting them back on the right track, and they had part of their tree, their family tree and friends tree that really were the ones that stuck with them and kept them coming back to the straight and narrow path. So the questions are what works best at a society level versus a close-up level, town level, state level. It's really an exploration point right now. So, and as it happens, Frank did get the message that apparently Ed cannot attend tomorrow. So, but I think if neither of you are available, Susan can represent us quite well. I think they're kind of trying to keep it a pretty small group for right now in conversation. So maybe that would be fine.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you. There's a couple of things I've learned recently. I mean, I don't really prescribe much opiates. In fact, I rarely, if ever, do. But for the people who get hooked on prescription opiates, I heard a statistic the other day that 80% of the people who get hooked on prescription opiates do not have a prescription for it. So it's not like people who are being prescribed opiates are getting addicted to it. It's people who are abusing opiates that are getting it from somebody else. And so I think what this is really saying is those of us who have these drugs in our medicine cabinets, you're creating first of all, you're creating the conditions for a disaster to develop, because I don't think anybody truly goes into this wanting to become an addict. But I think I was shocked to hear that 80% of the people who get addicted to opiate drugs are using drugs that are not prescribed to them. So, and this is prescription drugs, not talking about heroin. We all know how some people graduate from prescription drugs to heroin, and some people go straight into heroin because it's much cheaper.
Do you know what it is for kids that, getting them out of the medicine cabinet? Is there a percentage, a high percentage, or?
Well, it's basically the vulnerable ages are basically the developmental ages where kids are moving from childhood to adolescence. And what happens at that age is you start to get some life challenges. And the unfortunate reality is those anxieties, those stresses, those failures, drugs always make them better. And so we have to find better ways of helping our youth. First of all, some of it's going to be controlling access. That has to be part of it, but just pure prohibition isn't going to work. So some of it's controlling access, but the other part of it is we need to be teaching things about mindfulness to these vulnerable kids who are in this position. And we have to understand that drugs work 100% of the time at making you feel better. They attract a cost.
Some of the quotes in the paper that said, I think 2 out of the 3 people were quoted as saying, I took the pills, it made me feel better. It made me feel good. I had stresses, it helped me out. It made me feel better.
And think of who gets stressed. Somebody moving from maybe an elementary school atmosphere where they're told that they're doing everything right, and maybe they're challenged for the first time in middle school or high school. They meet their first failure or they get that first rejection, trying to figure out how to interact with people that they may want to date or be interested in. I mean, it's just a terrible time for these kids. It's an important time because you don't become an adult without learning how to deal with these challenges. But all of the defeats and anxieties that we all went through growing up, unfortunately, I think that our kids aren't really supported in the way that they need to be supported. So there's that part of it. You really need a very holistic approach. But part of it is restricting the access. You got to get these drugs out of your house. You have to. Do we have that kiosk?
I got rid of mine. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
It's available all day, night at the police station.
Yeah. So you
drop
them off and just get them out of your house. You don't need them for an emergency. If you have real pain, somebody will prescribe for you.
Right.
The other thing,
It's not good to keep the Percocet in the drug cabinet for.
Yeah, you don't. No, and part of it's our fault. I'm a doctor. I'm a prescriber. When I wrote my first prescription for Percocet or Vicodin, what did I do? I asked a person who was a year ahead of me in training. It's like, well, how many do you write? And I was like, oh, they might need 30. They don't need 30. They might need 10. Yeah.
There's oversight with parents too.
So it's we're at fault as well. So I think that and it's not just doctors who prescribe these. It's dentists, it's veterinarians. I mean, there's a lot of people who can, nurse practitioners in many places, there's a lot of people who can prescribe opiates. And there's an enormous responsibility. So, but we have to understand that you need a holistic approach. And I feel terrible for people who get addicted to these substances because it does remodel their brain in a lot of ways.
Move on to that heroin.
Well, you know what? Your body, when you keep stimulating it with a drug, what does it do? It makes more receptors. So it does remodel.
It adapts to that.
It adapts, and it actually makes you more sensitive to the pain that you're having. I think that some people start with this honestly with physical pain, but you don't need to treat mild to moderate pain with a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
There are other things that you can do. And the other thing is unless you have cancer, you shouldn't be treating chronic pain with opiates. There are other things that can be done. So this is a huge problem. It's going to take us a generation to fix it.
Yes.
But I think we need to start talking about it honestly.
And early.
That's exactly what it
young
is.
children.
Work with the youngsters, especially at those vulnerable ages as they move out of elementary school. They're vulnerable for about the next 10 years.
Yeah. And I mean, it's important to know that the heroin addiction is ageless. It doesn't own an age. It's everywhere. So, but I think that to try and at least educate the younger groups.
I think
they
get
do
your most
have
bang for your buck there. I mean, there are probably some
I agree.
55-year-olds who start using heroin, but I don't think that there are a lot of them.
Frank, to segue from what you were saying, you probably don't need these opiates unless you've had or have cancer. I know when I had cancer, I had prescriptions, and they work. And I became afraid, and I stopped taking because I thought that I could become addicted to the opiates. They do work, but I had to stop. It's scary.
Anyway, I think there's a lot to share, but there's not enough time to do it. But one thing I used to see in the pharmacy is the senior citizens always kept their pain medicines depending upon what their condition was. And one little old senior who I got to know and got to know the family too, she had cancer and she was dying. So she had high doses of narcotics at home. And she would come in and she says, they're not working. my pain is worse, they're just not working. And I'd say, well, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to call your doctor and talk to your doctor. Maybe we're going to change to a different narcotic to try to alleviate your pain. There's plenty out there and plenty of different doses, plenty of different forms they come in, so we'll try to find the right match. And we doctor up the dose. It's not working. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I went over to her house. I wanted to see what was going on, that the narcotics weren't working anymore. So I asked her if I could come over and look at all the medicine that she has to make sure everything is okay. And I did. And I opened up her, she was on oxycodone, straight oxycodone, didn't have the Tylenol mixed in, and it was relatively high dose, but she needed it. And I looked at the tablets, and there was no oxycodone in that bottle. And I said, who else has access to your apartment? And one of her relatives who would come over all the time to make sure she's okay had access to her apartment. I said, well, where do you normally keep your pain medicine? Right by my bedside. I said, well, the first thing you need to do is hide it. And don't let anybody in your room, because what was in the bottle, the person that came over switched their birth control pills because they looked the same color and the same size as this particular oxycodone tablet. It was a very, very small tablet, but potent. I figured out what they were when I went back to the pharmacy. So I called the doctor and I went to talk to the patient too. And I couldn't give her pills back, but I arranged with the doctor and to get her medicine that she needed. So all of you out there, you have grandmothers and older relatives and so forth, they really should be, their pain medicine should be unknown, and only, it should be, actually, to my opinion, it should be hidden from the family. Because I've seen where family members go take grandmas or their aunties pain meds. I mean, I've seen it. I just shared with you one story, but there's plenty more out there. And it was very, very sad, and she eventually did pass away, but I learned something from that experience, that a close family member would go to that point, and she was taking 1 or 2, 3 times a day, 4 times a day. So, I mean, she was overdosing on birth control pills. So I think that people that have medicine chests or they're on pain medicine, they need to, my opinion is, they need to hide it. They don't want to have it available to the kids or to other relatives. People take these things.
I think it speaks to the desperation that
Oh, absolutely.
people who are addicted.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Allow someone else to have pain so that you could,
But is that powerful?
Yes, exactly.
And I think, like you said, Frank, this is going to take a generation to reverse this. This is not something we can do in a year or two. It's,
Yeah, but we can't wait.
yeah, so
Got to start somewhere.
Susan will start the process tomorrow.
1,350 people died last year in Massachusetts. Opiates.
If you remember, we did
Bob's
start
getting worse.
earlier. We had an intern who already did a project and started educating her peers. So, and she would like to do a project for National Night Out and has come up with possibly a wristband or something to get the word out that we need to talk about it. This isn't, so she's actively looking for ideas and ways to get it out there.
Well, now let's come to the really exciting part of the meeting. We'll approve the minutes from the last 2 meetings.
Make a motion.
Larry, do you have, go ahead, before you, the minutes from April 30th?
I do. And I've looked at the minutes from May 28th too, and they're fine.
Do you want to move them separately then?
Yes, make a motion to approve the North Andover Board of Health meeting minutes from Thursday, April 30th, 2015.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion to approve the North Andover Board of Health meeting minutes from Thursday, May 28th, 2015.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next? What comes next?
Adjournment?
Yes.
Move to adjourn?
Always in order.
Second.
Second? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.